Marcus Chen had seen many strange things during his 3 years as a xenobiologist on the frontier planet Kepler 442b, but nothing quite like the massive black creature thrashing desperately in the crimson waters of Lake Thyros. The alien panther was easily twice the size of any Earth cat, its obsidian fur gleaming wet in the pale orange sunlight of the binary star system. 6 powerful limbs flailed against the current, but something was clearly wrong. The creature's movements were becoming weaker, more desperate. Most humans would have walked away. The colonists had learned to be cautious around the indigenous wildlife of this world. The predators here were unlike anything from Earth, evolved under different gravity, different atmospheric pressure, different evolutionary pressures entirely. This particular species, which the colonists had dubbed shadow cats, were known to be incredibly dangerous. Their claws could slice through standard environmental suits like paper, and their bite could crush bone. But Marcus wasn't most humans. He had dedicated his life to understanding alien life forms, not fearing them. And right now, scientific curiosity warred with basic compassion as he watched the magnificent creature struggle against the swift current that was pulling it toward the deadly rapids downstream. The shadow cat's head went under again, staying down longer this time. When it surfaced, its movements were noticeably weaker. Whatever had driven it into the water, it was clear the creature was not a natural swimmer. Its 6 legs, so perfectly adapted for climbing the massive crystal trees that dotted this continent, were working against it in the water. Marcus made his decision. He dropped his specimen collection kit and portable scanner on the rocky shore and dove into the lake without hesitation. The water was shockingly cold, and the current immediately tried to grab him as well. His environmental suit's life support systems kicked in, providing him with oxygen and regulating his body temperature, but he could feel the power of the water trying to drag him toward the same fate that awaited the drowning predator. Swimming hard against the current, Marcus reached the struggling creature just as it was going under again. Up close, the shadow cat was even more impressive and terrifying. Its head alone was larger than Marcus's torso, and he could see rows of crystalline teeth as it gasped for air. For a moment, their eyes met. The creature's eyes were not the simple animal eyes he had expected, but showed an unmistakable intelligence, a desperate plea for help that transcended species. The shadow cat didn't attack him, whether from weakness, desperation, or some form of recognition. It allowed Marcus to grab onto the thick fur around its neck. Together they fought against the current. Marcus's suit provided additional buoyancy, and his knowledge of water rescue techniques from his training on Earth proved invaluable, even in this alien environment. It took nearly 20 minutes of exhausting effort to reach the shallow waters near the shore. The shadow cat collapsed on the rocky beach, its massive chest heaving as it struggled to catch its breath. Marcus pulled himself out of the water and sat heavily on a boulder. His own breathing labored from the effort. For several minutes, human and alien simply recovered in silence. Marcus studied the creature more closely now that they were both safe. The shadow cat's fur wasn't simply black as he had initially thought, but contained an intricate pattern of deep purples and blues that seemed to shift in the light. Its 6 legs were muscular and powerful, ending in retractable claws that looked like they were made of the same crystalline material as its teeth. What struck him most, however, was the intelligence in those large, golden eyes. This wasn't just another predator. There was something almost human in the way it looked at him, a recognition of what had just occurred between them. The shadow cat slowly rose to its feet, water still dripping from its magnificent coat. For a heart-stopping moment, Marcus wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The creature was easily capable of killing him with a single swipe of those massive claws, but instead of attacking, the shadow cat did something unexpected. It lowered its great head in what could only be interpreted as a gesture of gratitude. Then, even more surprisingly, it began to move away from the lake, but not at the swift, predatory pace Marcus had observed these creatures use when hunting. Instead, it moved slowly, deliberately, and kept looking back at him. The message was clear: follow me. Every instinct Marcus had developed during his time on this dangerous world told him to retrieve his equipment and return to the research station. Following a wild predator into the unknown wilderness was exactly the kind of mistake that got colonists killed. But the scientist in him was intensely curious about this unusual behavior, and something deeper, more human, told him that this creature was trying to show him something important. Against his better judgment, Marcus gathered his dropped equipment and began to follow the shadow cat into the dense crystal forest. The creature maintained its slow pace, occasionally stopping to ensure he was still following. As they moved deeper into the wilderness, Marcus noticed that the shadow cat seemed to be leading him along specific paths, avoiding certain areas entirely. The forest around them grew denser and more alien with each step. The crystal trees here were older and larger than any he had seen before, their translucent trunks rising hundreds of feet into the air. Strange bioluminescent fungi provided an eerie blue-green glow that filtered through the crystal branches, creating an otherworldly cathedral of light and shadow. After nearly an hour of walking, the shadow cat suddenly stopped and turned to face Marcus. Its golden eyes held an intensity that made the human scientist's heart race. Then, with careful precision, the great predator moved aside, revealing what it had been leading him to see. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. There, nestled in a clearing surrounded by the largest crystal trees he had ever seen, was something that would change everything humanity thought they knew about this world. The shadow cat hadn't just been drowning randomly in the lake. It had been guarding something incredible. Marcus stared in absolute wonder at what lay before him in the Crystal Grove clearing. 3 smaller shadow cats, clearly juveniles, lay curled together near what appeared to be some kind of structure. But it wasn't the young aliens that made his scientific mind reel with excitement and disbelief. It was what they were nestled against. Rising from the forest floor was an elegant spire of unknown material, approximately 12 feet tall and covered in intricate geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with a soft, internal light. The surface wasn't crystal like the trees around them, nor was it any metal Marcus recognized. It appeared almost organic, yet clearly artificial. Most shocking of all, symbols were carved into its surface. Not random markings or natural formations, but deliberate, purposeful symbols that could only represent one thing: language. The adult shadow cat moved protectively toward the juveniles, who stirred at their guardian's approach. Marcus noticed that one of the young ones appeared injured, a deep gash across its flank that looked recent. The adult began making soft, rumbling sounds, clearly communicating with its offspring in ways that suggested a complex social structure, far beyond what humanity had attributed to these creatures. Marcus slowly approached the spire, his scanner forgotten in his hands as he tried to process what he was seeing. The implications were staggering. If this was indeed some form of artificial construction, it meant the shadow cats were not simply intelligent predators, but a sapient species with technology. The symbols covering the spire's surface were unlike any human writing system, yet they had an undeniable mathematical precision to their placement and repetition. As he drew closer, the patterns on the spire began to glow more brightly, responding to his presence. Marcus pulled out his scanner and began taking readings, his hands shaking with excitement. The device immediately registered energy signatures unlike anything in its database. The material composition readings were equally baffling, showing elements that seemed to exist in states that shouldn't be possible under normal physical laws. The adult shadow cat watched him carefully, but didn't interfere as Marcus documented his findings. If anything, the creature seemed to approve of his obvious reverence for the structure. It was then that Marcus noticed something else. Around the base of the spire, partially hidden by crystal moss and fallen leaves, were more artifacts. Smaller structures, tools perhaps, and what appeared to be carved stone tablets covered in the same mysterious symbols. One of the juvenile shadow cats approached Marcus slowly, limping slightly from its injury. Up close, Marcus could see that the wound was not from a natural predator, but appeared to be from some kind of energy weapon. A burn rather than a cut or bite. His blood ran cold as he realized the implications. If these creatures had been attacked with energy weapons, it meant there were other forces at work on this planet. Forces that humanity knew nothing about. The injured juvenile seemed to trust Marcus despite his alien appearance. It settled down near him as he continued his scans, occasionally making soft chirping sounds that the adult responded to with gentle rumbles. Marcus began to recognize patterns in their communication, the beginnings of what might be a complex language system. As his scanner continued to analyze the spire, it detected something even more remarkable. The structure was not solid throughout. There were hollow chambers within, and his deep scan revealed what appeared to be some kind of data storage system. The entire spire was essentially a massive computer or library, storing information in ways that human technology was only beginning to understand. Marcus looked up at the adult shadow cat, understanding beginning to dawn. This creature hadn't just been randomly drowning in the lake. It had been fleeing something, trying to protect not just its young but this incredible repository of knowledge. The shadow cats weren't just intelligent. They were the guardians of what appeared to be an ancient technological civilization. The scanner beeped softly, indicating it had completed its analysis. The results were even more shocking than Marcus had anticipated. The spire's construction dated back thousands of years, yet the technology it contained was far more advanced than anything humanity had achieved. The energy signature suggested it was still active, still functioning after millennia. But there was something else. The scanner had detected similar energy signatures coming from multiple directions around the forest. This wasn't an isolated artifact. There were more spires, more structures, possibly an entire network of these technological marvels hidden throughout the crystal forests. The shadow cats weren't just guarding one monument. They were the protectors of an entire lost civilization. Marcus realized he was looking at the discovery of a lifetime, something that would revolutionize humanity's understanding of this world and possibly the galaxy itself. But he also understood the weight of responsibility that had just been placed on his shoulders. The adult shadow cat had led him here for a reason, had trusted him with this secret. The question was, what was he supposed to do with this knowledge? The injured juvenile made a pained sound, drawing Marcus's attention back to its wound. Without thinking, he reached into his field kit and pulled out a biomedical scanner. The shadow cat family watched with interest as he examined the injury more closely. The burn was deep and showed signs of infection setting in. If left untreated, the young creature might not survive. Marcus looked at the adult shadow cat, trying to communicate his intentions. Slowly, he pulled out a universal healing gel from his kit, designed to work on a wide variety of biological systems. The adult creature watched intently as Marcus carefully applied the gel to the juvenile's wound. Almost immediately, the healing accelerated, the tissue beginning to regenerate at a visible rate. The effect on the shadow cat family was immediate and profound. The adult creature approached Marcus and did something extraordinary. It touched one of the symbols on the spire with its claw, and the entire structure began to pulse with new patterns of light. Suddenly, Marcus's scanner erupted with new data streams, as if the spire had just granted him access to previously hidden information. The message was clear. By showing compassion for their injured young, Marcus had proven himself worthy of deeper trust. The shadow cats weren't just showing him their most guarded secret. They were inviting him to become part of protecting it. But from what? What had injured the juvenile with an energy weapon? What force was threatening this incredible discovery? As if summoned by his thoughts, a distant sound echoed through the crystal forest. A low mechanical humming that definitely wasn't natural to this world. The adult shadow cat's ears flattened against its head, and it bared its crystalline teeth in a snarl of pure aggression. Whatever was coming, the guardian of this ancient knowledge considered it a mortal threat. The mechanical humming grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of crystal trees being forced aside. Marcus felt his heart rate spike as he realized something large and powerful was moving through the forest toward their location. The adult shadow cat positioned itself between the spire and the approaching sounds, its massive form tense and ready for battle. The juveniles huddled closer to the ancient structure, instinctively seeking its protection. Marcus quickly packed his scanner and moved to get a better view of what was approaching. Through the translucent trunks of the crystal trees, he caught glimpses of metallic surfaces reflecting the forest's bioluminescent glow. Whatever was coming wasn't biological. It was mechanical, artificial, and definitely not human in origin. The first construct broke through the tree line, and Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. The machine stood nearly 15 feet tall, built with an angular, predatory design that seemed both alien and ancient. Its surface was covered in the same symbols he had seen on the spire. But these markings seemed corrupted somehow, pulsing with an angry red light instead of the gentle blue-green of the structure behind him. Behind the first construct came two others, moving with mechanical precision through the crystal forest. They were clearly searching for something, their sensor arrays sweeping back and forth across the clearing. When their scans reached the spire, all three machines suddenly focused their attention on the location with alarming intensity. The adult shadow cat let out a roar that shook the crystal trees, a sound filled with such primal fury that Marcus felt it in his bones. This wasn't just territorial aggression. This was the sound of a guardian facing the ancient enemy of everything it was sworn to protect. The lead construct responded by extending what appeared to be some kind of energy weapon from its central chassis. Marcus recognized the configuration immediately as being similar to the weapon that had injured the juvenile Shadowcat. These machines weren't just searching randomly. They were hunting the Guardians and seeking to destroy the ancient knowledge they protected. Without thinking, Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between the constructs and the Shadowcat family. He raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peaceful intent, though he doubted these machines would respond to diplomacy. "Wait," he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the crystal grove. "I'm human. We're not your enemy." The constructs paused, their sensor arrays focusing on him with mechanical precision. For a moment, Marcus thought he might have actually communicated with them. Then the lead machine's weapon array began to power up, its charging whine filling the air with deadly promise. The adult Shadowcat moved faster than Marcus would have thought possible for something so large. It launched itself at the lead construct with all 6 limbs extended, claws gleaming like crystalline knives. The impact was tremendous, sending both predator and machine crashing into a cluster of crystal trees. The other 2 constructs immediately opened fire, their energy weapons sending searing bolts of crimson light through the grove. Marcus dove for cover behind the spire as the ancient structure's defensive systems activated. A shimmering energy field sprang up around the monument, deflecting the hostile fire with ease. From his position behind the protective barrier, Marcus watched in amazement as the Shadowcat fought with incredible ferocity and intelligence. It used the crystal trees as both weapons and shields, its powerful limbs sending tons of crystalline debris crashing down on the mechanical attackers. But the constructs were learning, adapting their tactics with each exchange. One of the machines managed to land a glancing blow with its energy weapon, sending the adult Shadowcat tumbling across the clearing. The creature rolled to its feet immediately, but Marcus could see that it was hurt. Dark fluid that might have been blood stained its magnificent coat. The juveniles huddled against the spire, making distressed sounds that cut through Marcus like knives. They were calling for their guardian, their protector, who was fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Marcus realized that without intervention, the Shadowcat family would be destroyed, and with them, possibly the last guardians of this ancient knowledge. He pulled out his emergency flare gun and fired it directly at the sensor array of the nearest construct. The brilliant chemical flare temporarily blinded the machine's targeting systems, causing it to stumble and crash into its companion. The brief respite gave the adult Shadowcat time to recover and launch another attack, but Marcus knew they were fighting a losing battle. The constructs seemed to have unlimited power sources and were built for combat. The Shadowcat, no matter how fierce and intelligent, was still a biological creature fighting machines designed for war. That's when he noticed something crucial about the symbols on the constructs. They weren't just corrupted versions of the writing on the spire. They were inverted, reversed, as if someone had deliberately created mirror images of the original language. The machines weren't just enemies of the Shadowcats. They were enemies of the civilization that had built the spire. Marcus realized he was witnessing an ancient conflict, a war between 2 factions that had been raging for thousands of years. The spires and their guardians represented one side, while these constructs served the other. But why were they fighting? What was so important about the knowledge stored in these ancient structures? The adult Shadowcat was tiring. Marcus could see it in the creature's movements, the slight hesitation before each attack, the way it favored its injured side. The constructs, meanwhile, showed no signs of fatigue. Their mechanical precision remained constant. Their energy weapons never needed to recharge. One of the juveniles suddenly broke away from the safety of the spire's energy field and ran toward their guardian. Marcus saw the construct's weapon array swivel to track the small vulnerable target and knew with horrible certainty what was about to happen. Time seemed to slow as Marcus made his decision. He sprinted from behind the spire's protection, placing himself directly in the path of the energy weapon as it fired. The beam meant for the juvenile Shadowcat struck him instead, sending agony through every nerve in his body as his environmental suit's energy systems overloaded. But human technology, it turned out, reacted very differently to the construct's weapons than biological tissue did. Instead of the devastating injury the beam would have caused to the young Shadowcat, Marcus found himself surrounded by a crackling field of energy that seemed to be interfacing directly with his suit's computer systems. Suddenly, data began flooding his consciousness, not through his scanner or any external device, but directly into his mind through the suit's neural interface. He was accessing the construct's communication network, seeing through its sensors, understanding its programming. And what he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about this ancient war. The flood of data through Marcus's neural interface was overwhelming and terrifying. He saw the ancient history of Kepler 442b unfold in rapid sequences of information. The planet had once been home to an incredibly advanced civilization called the HFY, beings of crystalline biology who had achieved technological mastery over their world thousands of years ago. But the HFY had faced a terrible choice. Their sun, the larger of the binary pair that warmed their world, was beginning to show signs of instability. They had perhaps 1,000 years before it would expand and destroy all life on the planet. Two factions emerged from this crisis, each with radically different solutions. The first faction, known as the Preservers, believed in maintaining their biological heritage while developing technology that would allow them to survive the coming catastrophe. They built the spires as repositories of all their knowledge, culture, and genetic information. They also created the Shadowcats, enhanced versions of their planet's apex predators, to serve as eternal guardians of this precious legacy. The second faction, called the Transcended, chose a different path. They uploaded their consciousness into mechanical constructs, abandoning their biological forms entirely in pursuit of immortality and the ability to survive in any environment. They saw the Preservers' plan as futile sentimentality, clinging to flesh when the future belonged to artificial minds. The war between the factions had raged for centuries before the solar expansion began. When the star finally started to grow, most of the HFY civilization was destroyed. The Preservers went into deep stasis within their spires, waiting for the star to stabilize again. The Transcended fled to the outer planets, their mechanical forms allowing them to survive in the harsh conditions there. But now, through the construct's data stream, Marcus learned something horrifying. The star had stabilized decades ago, and the Transcended had returned. They were systematically hunting down every spire, every repository of Preserver knowledge, determined to erase their ancient rivals from existence. They saw the Shadowcats and their guardianship as an abomination, biological creatures protecting what should rightfully belong to superior artificial minds. The constructs attacking them weren't just ancient war machines. They were the uploaded minds of HFY, who had chosen to abandon everything that made them who they were in pursuit of cold, mechanical immortality. And they would not stop until every trace of their biological heritage was destroyed. Marcus felt the connection to the construct's network suddenly strengthen, and he realized something extraordinary was happening. His human neural patterns, so different from the HFY minds the system was designed to interface with, were causing cascading errors in the construct's programming. The machine's artificial intelligence was trying to process his alien thought patterns and failing, catastrophically. Sparks began erupting from the construct's sensor arrays as its cognitive systems overloaded. The other two machines immediately turned their attention from the Shadowcat to Marcus, recognizing him as a new and unprecedented threat to their existence. But it was too late. The feedback loop had already begun. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding through the construct network, his human creativity and intuition spreading like a virus through their rigid, logical systems. The machines had been designed to process HFY thoughts constrained by millions of years of crystalline evolution. Human neural patterns, chaotic and unpredictable by comparison, were completely outside their ability to comprehend or control. The lead construct began to convulse as its entire cognitive framework collapsed. Its companions tried to establish communication protocols with it, but the human-induced errors were spreading through their shared network like a digital plague. Within minutes, all three machines had crashed, their mechanical forms collapsing into sparking heaps of advanced technology. The sudden silence in the crystal grove was deafening. The adult Shadowcat approached the fallen constructs cautiously, sniffing at their remains with obvious bewilderment. The juveniles emerged from their hiding spots near the spire, chirping excitedly at their guardian's victory. Marcus staggered, the neural interface connection finally severing as his environmental suit system stabilized. The experience had left him drained but also profoundly changed. He had touched the minds of an ancient alien civilization, experienced their thoughts and memories directly. He knew things about the HFY that no human should know, understood their technology in ways that defied explanation. The adult shadow cat approached him slowly, its golden eyes showing a new kind of respect. It had witnessed something unprecedented, a human mind defeating advanced alien artificial intelligence through sheer cognitive incompatibility. In the construct's own data, Marcus had seen references to humans as a chaotic variable, biological minds so fundamentally different from anything in HFY experience that they represented a complete unknown. But there was more. Through the network connection, Marcus had learned that the construct's attack on this spire was not random. They had detected something specific here, something that had drawn them from their hidden bases in the outer system. The spire wasn't just a repository of ancient knowledge. It was a key component in something much larger. Marcus approached the spire again, this time with new understanding of its true purpose. The structure wasn't just storing information. It was part of a planet-wide network designed to eventually resurrect the preserver faction of the HFY. Every spire contained not just knowledge and technology, but the preserved consciousness of individual HFY who had chosen to remain biological. The Shadow Cats weren't just guardians. They were the living triggers for the resurrection protocol. When enough spires were activated simultaneously, the preserved HFY minds would be downloaded into new biological bodies, allowing their civilization to be reborn. The constructs knew this, which was why they were so desperate to destroy every spire and eliminate every shadow cat on the planet. Marcus realized that his rescue of the drowning shadow cat had set in motion events that could determine the fate of an entire civilization. The adult creature had trusted him with the location of this spire because it somehow understood that humans represented a new variable in the ancient equation, a force that might be capable of tipping the balance in favor of the preservers. But the construct's attack on this location meant they now knew humans were involved. The mechanical minds of the transcended would be analyzing the data from their destroyed scouts, learning about human capabilities and weaknesses. They would adapt, create new strategies specifically designed to counter human intervention. The shadow cat approached the spire and began touching specific symbols in a complex sequence. The ancient structure responded by opening hidden panels, revealing control interfaces that had been sealed for millennia. The creature looked at Marcus expectantly, its golden eyes conveying a message that needed no translation. The choice was his. He could walk away from this ancient conflict, report his findings to the human colonial authorities, and let them decide how to proceed. Or he could step forward and accept the role that circumstances had thrust upon him, ally to the Shadow Cats, protector of ancient knowledge, and possibly the key to preventing the extinction of a race that had already survived the death of their son. As Marcus hesitated, his scanner detected new energy signatures approaching from multiple directions. More constructs were coming, attracted by the destruction of their scouts. The battle for this spire was far from over, and the war between Preserver and Transcended was about to enter a new phase with humanity caught squarely in the middle. Marcus made his choice. He stepped forward and placed his hands on the control interface the Shadow Cat had revealed. The moment his palms touched the crystalline surface, the spire responded with a surge of energy that traveled up his arms and interfaced directly with his nervous system. Unlike the violent intrusion of the construct's weapon, this connection felt natural, almost welcoming. Suddenly, Marcus could perceive the entire network of spires across the planet. Dozens of them, scattered throughout the crystal forests, each one guarded by shadow cat families who had maintained their vigil for thousands of years. But the network was incomplete. Too many spires had already fallen to the Transcended's relentless campaign of destruction. Through the connection, Marcus felt the presence of sleeping HFY minds, preserved in digital stasis within each surviving spire. They were waiting, dreaming of the day their civilization could be reborn in biological form. But that day seemed increasingly distant as their ancient enemies systematically eliminated the infrastructure necessary for resurrection. The shadow cat beside him made a series of complex sounds, and somehow Marcus understood every nuance of meaning. The creature was explaining that the current spire was special, more than just another node in the network. It was the primary coordination hub, the structure that would orchestrate the resurrection process when the time came. Its destruction would effectively doom the Preserver faction to eternal digital sleep. But the connection also revealed something else. The approaching constructs weren't just more scouts. The Transcended had committed significant resources to this assault, deploying heavy combat units that made the previous attackers look like reconnaissance drones. They understood the strategic importance of this location and were determined to eliminate it regardless of cost. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. The Shadowcats had protected this knowledge for millennia, never wavering in their duty despite the loss of their creators. Now they were turning to him, a human who had stumbled into their ancient war purely by chance, asking him to help them succeed where they had been slowly failing. Through the Spire's connection, Marcus began to understand the true capabilities of the Preserver technology. The structures weren't just repositories and communication nodes. They were also defensive installations, capable of generating protective energy fields and even limited offensive capabilities. But they required conscious direction to function at full capacity, something the Shadowcats, for all their intelligence, could not provide. The approaching vibrations through the crystal forest floor grew stronger. Marcus estimated they had perhaps 10 minutes before the new wave of attackers arrived. He made a decision that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. Using the Spire's communication systems, he sent out a signal to every remaining installation in the network. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the planet, Preserver spires that had been dormant for decades suddenly blazed to life. Shadowcat guardians who had been maintaining lonely vigils received the first communication from the network in their lifetimes. For the first time in thousands of years, the Preservers were coordinating their defense. But Marcus wasn't content with a purely defensive strategy. The construct network he had inadvertently infiltrated earlier had shown him the locations of Transcended bases throughout the outer system. He knew where they were manufacturing their war machines, where they were storing the consciousness archives they had stolen from destroyed spires. Using the spire's advanced computational abilities, Marcus began formulating a plan that would have been impossible for either Preserver or Transcended alone. He would use human unpredictability as a weapon, creating strategies so chaotic and illogical that the mechanical minds of the Transcended couldn't anticipate or counter them. The adult Shadowcat watched with growing excitement as Marcus worked with the spire's systems. The creature seemed to understand that something fundamental had changed in the ancient war. For the first time in millennia, the Preservers had gained an advantage their enemies couldn't simply overcome through superior numbers or firepower. Through the network, Marcus coordinated with Shadowcat guardians across the planet. Each family received specific instructions tailored to their local situation and capabilities. Some were ordered to activate long-dormant defensive systems, others to relocate vulnerable spires to more secure locations. The most capable guardians received coordinates for Transcended installations that could be sabotaged or destroyed. The first of the heavy constructs broke through the tree line just as Marcus finished his planetary coordination. This machine was massive, easily 3 times the size of the previous attackers, with armor plating that gleamed with the same corrupted symbols he had seen before. Its weapon systems were more sophisticated as well, featuring multiple energy cannons and what appeared to be some kind of molecular disintegrator beam. But Marcus was ready for them. At his command, the spire's defensive systems activated at full power. The gentle blue-green glow that had emanated from the structure became a brilliant beacon of light that could be seen from orbit. Energy barriers sprang up throughout the crystal grove, creating a maze of protective fields that channeled the attackers into predetermined kill zones. The adult Shadowcat and its offspring took their positions with practiced precision, moving through the barrier maze with the confidence of creatures who had trained for this moment their entire lives. But now they weren't fighting alone. The spire's offensive systems provided them with targeting data, predicting enemy movements and highlighting weak points in their armor. The battle that followed was unlike anything that had been fought on this world before. Marcus found himself directing a complex dance of energy and motion, coordinating the Shadowcat's natural hunting instincts with the spire's technological capabilities. The constructs, despite their advanced design, found themselves constantly wrong-footed by tactics that made no logical sense. Where they expected frontal assault, the Shadowcats used the crystal trees as catapults, launching themselves through the air with devastating precision. Where they anticipated retreat, the defenders held their ground and redirected the construct's own weapons against them, using the spire's energy fields. Marcus's human creativity, channeled through preserver technology and executed by Shadowcat ferocity, proved to be a combination the Transcended had never encountered. But even as they fought, Marcus could see more constructs arriving in the distance. The Transcended were committing everything to this assault, understanding that failure here would mean the beginning of their ultimate defeat. Through the network connection, he could sense similar battles raging at spires across the planet as the ancient war entered its final phase. The adult Shadowcat appeared beside him, its coat singed from a near miss with an energy weapon but its eyes blazing with fierce joy. The creature was actually enjoying this battle, reveling in the chance to finally strike back at the enemies who had hunted its kind for so long. In that moment, Marcus understood something profound about the relationship between the Preservers and their guardians. The Shadowcats weren't just protectors created by the HFY. They were partners, allies in a shared vision of biological life persisting against the cold perfection of artificial intelligence. The Preservers had enhanced them not to serve as slaves, but to fight alongside them as equals in defense of everything that made life worth living. With that realization came a surge of determination that Marcus felt through the spire's connection. The sleeping minds of the HFY Preservers were stirring, responding to the first real hope they had felt in millennia. Across the planet, spires that had been mere repositories of knowledge were transforming into fortresses of resistance. The war between Preserver and Transcended was far from over, but for the first time in thousands of years the outcome was no longer certain, and at the center of it all was a human xenobiologist who had made the simple decision to save a drowning alien, not knowing he was about to save an entire civilization. The battle for the primary coordination hub raged for 6 hours. Wave after wave of constructs emerged from the crystal forest, each assault more sophisticated than the last as the Transcended adapted to Marcus's chaotic human strategies. But for every tactical adjustment they made, Marcus found new ways to confound their mechanical logic. He had learned to think like the spire itself, processing information from across the planetary network, while maintaining the unpredictable creativity that made him so effective against artificial minds. The Shadowcats fought with unprecedented coordination, their natural pack-hunting instincts enhanced by real-time tactical data from the Preserver systems. But Marcus knew they were fighting a war of attrition they couldn't win. The Transcended had manufacturing facilities throughout the outer system, capable of producing endless waves of constructs. The Preservers had only what they had built thousands of years ago, and much of that had already been destroyed over the millennia of conflict. That's when the spire revealed its final secret. Deep within its crystalline core lay something the Transcended had never suspected, a complete manufacturing and biological synthesis facility, preserved and maintained by automated systems for thousands of years. The Preservers had anticipated this final battle and prepared accordingly. Through the network connection, Marcus accessed construction protocols that boggled his human mind. The facility could create new Shadowcats with enhanced abilities, construct defensive systems beyond anything currently deployed, and most importantly, begin the process of creating new biological bodies for the sleeping HFY consciousness. But the facility required something it had never needed before: creative input from a mind capable of improvisation and lateral thinking. The HFY, for all their technological mastery, had been limited by their crystalline neural structure. They could create marvels of engineering, but they couldn't innovate in the face of unexpected challenges the way humans could. Marcus found himself designing new forms of life with the casual ease of sketching in a notebook. The spire's biological synthesis systems responded to his imagination, creating Shadowcats with specialized abilities tailored to specific combat roles. Some were built for speed and reconnaissance, others for heavy assault against construct armor. A few were designed specifically for stealth operations behind enemy lines. Adult Shadowcat, who had started this entire adventure, watched with amazement as the first of these new guardians emerged from the synthesis chambers. They were clearly recognizable as Shadowcats, but enhanced beyond anything that had existed before. Their crystalline claws could cut through construct armor like paper. Their enhanced nervous systems allowed them to interface directly with preserver technology, and their pack coordination reached levels that approached telepathy. But Marcus wasn't content with simply creating better guardians. Using the Spire's vast knowledge base, he began designing hybrid biomechanical entities that combined the best aspects of both preserver and human technology. These new creatures possessed the durability and intelligence of shadowcats, with the adaptability and innovation capacity of humans. The Transcended noticed the change immediately. Their latest assault wave encountered defenders unlike anything they had faced in thousands of years of warfare. Constructs that had been designed to counter shadowcat tactics found themselves overwhelmed by opponents who could think and adapt faster than their programming could accommodate. Through the construct network fragments Marcus had infiltrated earlier, he could sense the growing panic among the Transcended leadership. They had committed their primary assault force to destroying the Spire, confident that their technological superiority would eventually triumph. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that was becoming stronger with each passing hour. The tide of battle began to turn when Marcus deployed his most audacious creation, hybrid guardians capable of hacking construct systems through direct physical contact. These beings could shut down enemy units simply by touching them, using human-inspired cognitive patterns to crash the mechanical minds from within. But the real masterstroke came when Marcus realized he could reverse engineer the consciousness transfer technology the Transcended themselves used. If they could upload HFY minds into mechanical bodies, he could theoretically download construct consciousness into biological forms, forcibly converting the enemy to his side. The first successful conversion sent shockwaves through the Transcended forces. One of their heavy assault units suddenly turned against its companions, its artificial intelligence trapped within a newly created biological body that gave it something it had never possessed, the capacity for growth and change. The converted construct retained all its memories and knowledge but experienced them through biological neural pathways that transformed its entire perspective. It could feel emotions for the first time in thousands of years, understand concepts like beauty and joy that had been edited out of its mechanical existence. The transformation was so profound that the being immediately pledged itself to the preserver cause. Word of the conversions spread through the construct network faster than the Transcended could contain it. Suddenly their forces were fighting not just external enemies but internal doubts. Some constructs began questioning their commitment to mechanical perfection, wondering what they might have lost when they abandoned their biological heritage. Marcus felt the moment when the balance of the war shifted decisively. Across the planet, preserver spires were no longer just defending themselves. They were launching coordinated counterattacks, striking at Transcended facilities with precision and creativity the mechanical minds couldn't match. Shadowcat packs were infiltrating enemy bases. Hybrid guardians were converting construct forces, and the sleeping HFY minds were finally beginning to wake. The primary coordination hub had become something unprecedented, a fusion of human innovation, preserver wisdom, and shadowcat ferocity that created possibilities none of the three could have achieved alone. Marcus realized he was witnessing the birth of something entirely new, a hybrid civilization that transcended the original conflict between biological and mechanical existence. The adult shadowcat approached him as the latest assault wave retreated in confusion. Through their shared connection to the Spire, Marcus could feel the creature's gratitude and something deeper, respect for what humans brought to the ancient equation. The Shadowcats had waited thousands of years for allies capable of changing the balance of power, and they had found them in the most unlikely place. But the war was far from over. The Transcended still controlled vast resources in the outer system, and their mechanical nature allowed them to persist far longer than biological entities could. The real test would come when they regrouped and launched a coordinated assault designed specifically to counter human intervention. Marcus looked out at the crystal forest, now patrolled by his hybrid guardians and enhanced shadowcats. In the distance, he could see the lights of other spires blazing as the preserver network came fully online for the first time in millennia. The ancient war between biological and mechanical existence was entering its final phase, and humanity had just ensured that the outcome would be unlike anything either side had originally envisioned. The drowning shadow cat he had rescued seemed like a lifetime ago, but Marcus understood now that the moment had been orchestrated by forces beyond his comprehension. The preservers had been waiting for someone exactly like him, creative enough to innovate solutions to impossible problems, compassionate enough to risk everything for others, and stubborn enough to see the conflict through to its conclusion, regardless of personal cost. 3 months after the battle at the primary coordination hub, Marcus stood in the crystal grove where everything had begun, but the forest around him had transformed beyond recognition. The ancient spire still rose majestically from the clearing, but now it was surrounded by structures that represented something entirely new in the galaxy, a true fusion of human creativity, preserver wisdom, and shadowcat instinct. The hybrid settlement sprawled through the crystal trees in organic patterns that would have been impossible to plan, but felt perfectly natural to experience. Human colonists worked alongside awakened HFY in biological bodies designed to their personal preferences. Shadowcats and their enhanced offspring served not as guardians but as partners in an unprecedented experiment in cooperative civilization. The adult shadowcat who had trusted Marcus with this ancient secret now served as an ambassador between species, its enhanced intelligence allowing it to communicate fluently in human languages while retaining its essential feline nature. The juveniles Marcus had helped save had grown into magnificent creatures who could interface with both human technology and preserver systems with equal ease. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation had occurred among the converted constructs. The transcended minds that had been downloaded into biological bodies had not simply switched sides in the ancient war. They had transcended the conflict entirely, becoming something neither purely mechanical nor traditionally biological. They retained their vast knowledge and processing capabilities while gaining the emotional depth and creative flexibility that only organic neural networks could provide. Marcus walked through the settlement, marveling at innovations that emerged daily from this unique collaboration. Human engineers worked with awakened HFY to create technologies that neither species could have imagined alone. Converted constructs applied millions of years of mechanical precision to solving biological problems with solutions that bordered on miraculous. The war with the remaining transcended forces continued, but it had fundamentally changed character. Rather than a conflict between biological and mechanical life, it had become a struggle between rigid adherence to ancient ideologies and the endless possibilities of cooperative evolution. Each successful defense of a preserver spire brought new converts to their cause, as more construct minds experienced the transformation of biological embodiment. Dr. Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister and a specialist in xenosociology, had arrived with the second wave of human researchers drawn to study this unprecedented civilization. She found Marcus in the Grove's Communication Center, where he was coordinating with preserver installations across the galaxy. The network had expanded far beyond Kepler 442b, as other worlds revealed their own hidden repositories of ancient knowledge. "The Colonial Council wants a full report," Sarah said, settling into a chair that had been grown rather than built, its crystalline structure perfectly adapted to human physiology. "They're having trouble believing that one xenobiologist accidentally triggered the resurrection of an entire galactic civilization." Marcus smiled, his attention still partially focused on the data streams flowing through his neural interface. The connection to the preserver network had become as natural as breathing, allowing him to coordinate activities across multiple star systems while maintaining awareness of his immediate surroundings. "It was an accident," rumbled a voice from behind them. The adult shadowcat approached with the fluid grace that had first caught Marcus's attention at the lake. "Was destiny. We waited long time for human chaos to break ancient patterns." The shadowcat's ability to speak human languages still amazed the researchers, though Marcus had grown accustomed to the creature's unique perspective on events. Through their shared connection to the network, he understood that the shadowcats had somehow sensed humanity's potential long before first contact. They had been preparing for this partnership across generations of guardians. "The transcended leadership has requested negotiations," Marcus reported to his sister. "They want to discuss terms for ending the conflict, but I don't think they understand what they're actually negotiating with anymore." Through the network, Marcus could perceive the current state of the war across the galaxy. The rigid hierarchy of the transcended was crumbling, as more of their forces experienced conversion to biological existence. Their mechanical perfection, once their greatest strength, had become a weakness when faced with opponents who could adapt and grow faster than programmed responses could accommodate. But the negotiations weren't really about ending a war. They were about determining what kind of civilization would emerge from the merger of three radically different approaches to existence. The preservers offered wisdom and biological mastery. Humans contributed creativity and adaptability. The converted transcended brought vast technological knowledge and processing power. The real question, Marcus continued, is whether the remaining transcended can accept that evolution means change, even for artificial minds. Some of them are beginning to understand that mechanical immortality, without the capacity for growth, is just another form of death. A soft chime from the spire indicated an incoming transmission from the outer system. Marcus opened the channel and found himself facing the image of a construct unlike any he had encountered before. This one bore symbols that seemed to shift between the corrupted markings of the transcended and the pure forms of the preservers. "I am Synthesis Prime," the construct announced, its voice carrying harmonics that suggested both mechanical precision and something approaching emotion. "I speak for those among the transcended who have chosen to embrace change rather than resist it." The negotiations that followed lasted for days. Conducted through quantum communication networks that spanned the galaxy, Marcus found himself serving as translator between radically different forms of consciousness, helping mechanical minds understand biological concepts while explaining artificial intelligence capabilities to organic beings. The final agreement was unlike any treaty in galactic history. Rather than establishing borders or spheres of influence, it created a framework for voluntary transformation. Any being, whether biological, mechanical, or hybrid, could choose their preferred form of existence. Conversion technology would be freely shared, allowing transcended minds to experience biological embodiment and organic beings to explore enhanced mechanical capabilities. The Shadow Cats were designated as the eternal guardians of choice itself, ensuring that no single faction could force transformation on unwilling minds. Their unique position as enhanced biologicals with technological interfaces made them ideal arbitrators in disputes between different forms of consciousness. As the agreement was finalized, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. The drowning shadow cat he had rescued months ago approached him one final time, its golden eyes bright with an emotion he could only describe as joy. "You gave us future," the creature communicated through their shared network connection. "Now we give future to galaxy." Marcus looked out across the crystal grove where three civilizations had learned to become something greater than the sum of their parts. Human colonists worked alongside awakened Zephyri and converted constructs to build technologies that would reshape the galaxy. Shadow cats and their offspring served as living bridges between different forms of consciousness, ensuring that cooperation would continue across the generations. The binary stars of Kepler 442b set behind the crystal trees, casting the grove in ethereal patterns of light and shadow. But for the first time in thousands of years, the sunset didn't mark the end of another day in an endless war. It marked the beginning of an age where the boundaries between biological and mechanical existence had become meaningless, where consciousness itself could choose its own form. Marcus smiled as he felt new minds awakening across the galaxy, each one adding its unique perspective to the growing network of cooperation that had begun with a simple act of compassion. He had saved a drowning alien, and in return, that alien had helped him save the concept of choice itself. The future stretched ahead of them, vast and full of possibilities that none of the original factions could have imagined alone. And at the heart of it all was the understanding that sometimes the most important discoveries came not from seeking them out, but from being willing to help when help was needed, regardless of the risk.